Okay, so you told legislators that they have tough jobs. If you were a state lawmaker today, what priorities would you focus on?
My first priority would be to attract capital to provide small businesses with the working capital they need for payroll, equipment, investment, and it's the only way I know how to make jobs. Virtually all new jobs in the last 30 years have come through small businesses, and small businesses are stuck with banks as a source of financing. So that means you also have to get the banks back in business, and that means working with bankers to find out why are they not lending money. It has to do with regulations and pressure from regulators.
Any specific small business policy that you would focus on?
Well, the slam dunk small business policy is actually regulatory change. Regulations impose massive costs on small businesses. In general, the biggest cost is environmental regulations. And those would be things that you could make a big difference on, but it would require rewriting a lot of pages of regulations to do it. Tax rates is another. Small businesses typically are organized as proprietorships or partnerships, which means the owners pay ordinary income tax rates on their gains. The top ordinary income tax rate is effectively the tax on small business income in the U.S. So when you're talking about tax rates, you have to be especially careful that you don't tax small business owners out of job creation.
And so for state lawmakers looking at tight budgets, are there ways that you would recommend offsetting those? If it's less revenue, if they're going to give tax breaks, is there something you would recommend along those lines?
Well, the truth is we don't need breaks so much as we need to make sure the federal government doesn't raise the marginal tax rates, because that's what will really hurt those small business owners. I know that's not in the control of the state legislators, but they do have lunch at the same clubs and talk to each other. But the regulatory changes often do have state solutions that can be done.
Okay. And you mentioned, switching gears a little bit, that we may have to print our way out of the recession. What's the timeline that you would see for that? And is that something you think will happen?
The printing of money to try and deal with the financial crisis has actually already happened. The monetary base, which measures the amount of money the Fed shovels into the banking system, has tripled since 2007, and that's enough to triple the U.S. price level over a period of 10 years or so. So far, it hasn't really caught on fire, and that's because unemployment and the economy are so slow that nobody can raise their prices, but it's really already sort of in the oven. And so in order to not have prices go up, the Fed would have to actually extract that money back out of the system by essentially selling bonds that they've been buying. And so the danger is actually quite real, because they've already done the work that would make the inflation happen. And that, unfortunately, is something state governments can't do anything about, because the monetary policy is really set by the Open Market Committee in Washington. So you have to work through your regional Fed bank for that.
Okay. And then finally, are you optimistic overall about the U.S. economy looking ahead?
I have 6 children, so I'm optimistic by definition. And we're the richest people that have ever lived in the history of the world. We have problems today. We're shooting our own feet off by not being able to sit down and talk with each other about how to solve those problems. They're not unsolvable. It just means we need some adults in the room to do it. The adults are missing in action today. So just like the Super Debt Commission that was unable to agree on a solution to the U.S. debt being downgraded, that's unacceptable. So I would fire these people, and I would bring in people who will act like adults.